All right, ladies and gentlemen, so we come back to triangles, and we are going to be using square roots, obviously, because that one came first this week. But we're going to use our knowledge of triangles, square roots, and a brand new thing that I'm sure you've at least heard of to find some stuff about triangles, and that is called the Pythagorean Theorem. I'm sure you guys have heard that the name for sure. I'm sure you've definitely heard a squared plus b squared equals c squared. That is the Pythagorean theorem. A couple things to keep in mind. A, B, and C are all side lengths. They have nothing to do with the angle. The Pythagorean theorem only works for right triangles. Only for right triangles. And what I mean by that is, so last week we talked about the angles in a triangle. If you have one right angle, it is a right triangle, and that'll be indicated by the square in the corner of the 90-degree angle, the right angle. Okay, so this only works for right triangles. A, B, and C are all side lengths. One thing to keep in mind, A and B are the legs, and that just means the two shorter sides, and C is the hypotenuse. Hypotenuse is always the longest side. It's always across from the 90-degree angle, and we use C to represent it. So C, it's always on that side of the equal sign. Okay, now a squared plus b squared equals c squared, the Pythagorean theorem, is just an equation. We're going to plug stuff in for whatever purposes we need to use it, but you're always going to use a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Now, one of the questions we can answer is it a right triangle or not? All right, now just looking at the picture, you can't really tell, and there's no way to tell just looking at the picture, but you're going to use a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Now, if this works, it is a right triangle. If it does not, it's not a right triangle. And here's what I mean. First off, identify your longest side. That's your C. Doesn't matter about the other two. Doesn't matter what order. Just know that you're going to put 5 squared plus 12 squared, and it's going to be set equal to 13 squared. So we're given all three sides, so we can plug in all three sides. And what we're trying to do is if this works, if they are in fact equal, then it is a right triangle. If they are not, then it's not. So let's see, 5 squared is 25, 12 squared is 144, 13 squared I believe is 169. Yep. All right. Now, we're not solving anything, so do not try and bring that 25 or the 144 over to the other side. Just add them straight down. And it ends up that 169 does, in fact, equal 169. So what does that mean? That means that that combination of sides, 5, 12, and 13, works to create a right triangle. So is it a right triangle? You're going to say yes, and you need to tell me what you ended up with. So just say 169 equals 169. Something to show me that you did the work. Preferably, you could take a picture of your work. Not many people have been doing that, but you can take a picture of your work and show me that way. All right. So if this a squared plus b squared equals c squared works, then that means that this is a right triangle. So that means that this angle right here is right. So we could draw that little square there. And it would work because it's a right triangle. The Pythagorean theorem shows us whether or not it is a right triangle. So let me show you another example. Okay. Is this a right triangle? We don't know. All we know is we have some triangle. C is our biggest side. And you don't have to draw the picture. I find that it's kind of helpful. But ultimately, you're going to use a squared plus b squared equals c squared. The c is 12.2, 6.4, and the 12 won't really matter where they go. But you're going to square everything. So 6.4 squared, or 6.4 times 6.4, 40.96. We know 12 times 12 is 144. And then 12.2 times 12.2 is 148.84. All right, so add up these. It's 184.96 is equal to 148. Now, are those equal? I really hope you're able to tell me no, they're not equal. Therefore, it is not a right triangle. So I would want you to type, oops, what the heck is no, 184.96 does not equal 148.4. So I know that you did the math and you answered the question. Okay. Now, this one, find the missing sides. So for this one, you're missing a side. And we already know it's a right triangle, so this is not the same type of problem. You just need to use what we know to find this. Now, first off, is this the longest side? Yes, it is. So this is our C. Okay? Now, you don't have to even create your own variable. You can just say C. That's C. We're going to use A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And we're going to plug in what we know, and we're going to find what we don't. So actually, I'm going to use a different color. Now, we know that this is the 4 and 8 are A and are B because those are shorter than this side. It's across. The longest side is always across from that's the right angle. So we know that this is our longest side. Now, what we can say is we can say 4 squared plus 8 squared equals, we don't know C. So I'm going to use blue, C squared. So we want to find C. We're actually solving for C this time. Now, 4 squared is 16. 8 squared is 64. We're just going to leave the C alone for now. Now 16 plus 64 is 80. All right. Now, we need to solve for C. This is where the square root comes in. Okay. In order to get C by itself, we got to get rid of that squared. And the opposite of squared is square root. So you're going to take the square root of both sides. And you can round this. The square root of 80 is not going to come out to be pretty. It's going to come out to be 8.94. And that's fine. That's what you can write. 8.94 is the answer. All right. So basically, when it comes to these, is it a right triangle? Plug in all your sides, see if it's true. If you need to find the missing side, you need to plug in what you know and solve for what you don't know. The only difference here is in order to get rid of that squared, you have to square root both sides. And what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. All right. Last one. Identify our C, our longest side. It's always across from the right angle. You can usually identify it pretty easily just by looking at it too. This is our C. We want to find, let's say A. It doesn't matter if you use A or B, but ultimately we don't know A, so A squared, and then plus 3.6 squared is equal to 7.4 squared, because we know C. All right, and we're just going to solve for it. We want to find A. So do 3.6 squared, or 3.6 times 3.6. So we have our A squared plus 12.96 equal to 7.4. Oops. 7.4 times 7.4. 7.4 squared is 54.76. Now this is slightly different. We want to solve for A, so we need to get A by itself. So the first thing you need to do is subtract 12.96 from both sides. All right, we have A squared now all by itself on this side. And we have to subtract, and we get 41.8. All right, 41.8. Now to get the a by itself, you have to do the opposite of squared. So take the square root of both sides. It will be a decimal. And it'll be 6.47. So that is the length. Cool. Of that missing side. One thing to keep in mind here is when we found C, the longest side, in the third problem, it's our longest side. It's the longest side. Whereas when we were only finding the A or the B, the shorter side, 7.4 is still our longest side, our C. So that's one way you can check to make sure your work is correct. Other than that, that will be about it.